Well, Nancy, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm happy you're in Portland. What's actually brought you to Portland today?
A little bit of family stuff, but also mostly I'm back here covering the continued sort of unrest here in Portland. We're a couple days away from the election, so we anticipate something's going to be going down, and I'll be here to cover it for a reason.
Do you have any predictions about the election, or not necessarily who's going to win, but what will happen if
Well,
either wins?
my feeling with the protesters in Portland is that they had a lot of momentum, and had the wildfires not kind of stopped it, I think they would have been going a little stronger now. But there is a little bit of a sense here right now that it's a little quiet. It's a little bit of the quiet before the storm. I think we are going to have some action on election night. I don't know what it is. Obviously, if Trump wins, it'll be a lot hotter. But I also think we're living in a little bit of a post-political world. I don't really think the protesters on the ground care that much about Biden. So I think if they just feel like reacting, they're going to react, whatever happens. So we'll see.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move on to my questions here. So, yeah, the series is called the Woke Reformation because I think there's a kind of reformation happening in secular circles as well as in Christianity. You can see people are adopting this woke social justice ideology, and it's kind of deranging our politics and our ability to speak with one another. I'm curious what that term means to you, woke. What does woke mean?
Well, I think it sort of means just what you said. People are not willing to talk about things. So it's sort of the opposite of woke, right? If you're feeling super alert and awake, you want to engage with people. You want to hear their ideas. And I think most of the positions and ideology around wokeism, for lack of a better term, is that they don't want to hear other people's ideas. They have codified or concretized whatever their ideas are. And if you are not in line with that, you are somehow the enemy. It's sort of very anti-discussion, which I find, like, how can you be anti-curiosity? How can you want fewer voices in the room? But I guess it's because they find the ideas of others threatening, and threatening because maybe the edifices upon which they've built their ideologies just ain't that strong.
Right. No,
So,
that's a good point. And it is funny because I often feel like people start to wake up to their wokeness. In other words, they start to realize, like, oh, I was just kind of latching on to a movement and an ideology that, as you said, sort of tamps down discussion.
yes, and I think that, we definitely feel as though it's younger folks that are embracing wokeness. And, I absolutely believe that a lot of them do believe that, wow, we're waking up to the way the world should be better. I think every generation feels that. And there's definitely strides have been made in this country. I think older folks, if they're not pushing back, and most people don't push back because they're afraid, I don't know if they really, cleave to the wokeification or not, or if they're just scared to say anything, or they just think, oh, these crazy kids are going to wake up at some point and realize they've got to function in the world, as opposed to just trying to X out everything in the world that they might not like. So.
Right, right. Well, so as a journalist, have you seen movements like this before, and have they gone in a similar direction, or how does this compare to past movements?
That's an interesting question, because I have not seen this exactly. I started really being a journalist, and I started being a human in the 1960s, but I started being a journalist in the 1990s, and we did not have this kind of movement. I mean, you had some sort of, earth activists. You definitely had people that were against Ronald Reagan or George Bush, and people were vocal about that. But I did not see or did not perceive the shutting down of discussion. There wanting to be fewer voices around. This has gained more momentum. I'll give you an example. It'll be 2 years ago in January. I was sitting with some friends of mine, some journalists, Barry Weiss and Matt Welch, and we were at the Comedy Cellar in New York. And there were a bunch of us there, and we were like, ha ha, really gotta push back the walls on all these things that, publications and people are saying we can't talk about, right? Ha ha. And now, wow. I mean, it has really really come to pass, that the things you're not supposed to talk about, that the institutions where we used to count on them talking about these ideas are just shutting them down. It's been pretty mighty, I have to say. And I still firmly believe that we do need to not be reactionary so much. I'm not really interested in being reactionary, but I am interested in people's ideas, and I am interested in saying, listen, we can talk about whatever we want. And I really want these ideas in the room, because let's let these ideas fight them out, right? And nothing should be not be allowed to talk about.
So why is it important to hear even these woke ideas that maybe we don't agree with? But why is that important?
I think it's important to hear just about everybody's ideas. I mean, especially if they're bringing them in good faith, which would be terrific, right? You have more ideas in the room. Some are going to be awful and are going to die off quickly. But there's so much more dynamism, right? If you get different voices in the room, if you get different opinions in the room, and you can build on other people's ideas. And I mean, I'm not particularly interested in creating any ideology. I'm just curious about people and about the world and about ideas in general. But the idea that you would want fewer ideas in the room because that is going to somehow strengthen your position, gosh, that really strikes me as cowardly. It's like, if you can't support other people pushing back, hopefully in a respectful way, against what you're thinking, then you don't have the tensile strength in your ideas and in your ideology. So more.
No, I love that. I think that's great. It just reminds me of On Liberty by John Stuart Mill. It's a great little tract. So in Portland, it seems to be the sort of the woke capital, and I think personally a lot of what's happening in the streets is the result of woke ideology run amok. And so you've been reporting on this, and I'm curious, aside from the economic depression and COVID and the sort of pent-up frustration, as well as the anger toward police brutality, the understandable anger, do you think there's something else that sort of ties these groups and these people together?
I think here in Portland, Portland is a young city. You have a lot of young people here. And a lot of them came here to sort of live out their progressive dreams, some of which are completely laudable. Like, we want to be green, and we want to, kind of make use of the resources that Portland has. And we want to create, good infrastructure and good public transportation and all these things, some of which are achievable. But when they're not immediately achievable, people are like, hey, Portland didn't deliver on my dreams, and someone has to be at fault, right? So that someone is going to be, Ted Wheeler is pretty widely known as being one of the most progressive, mayors in the country. And now he's called Tear Gas Ted. Kate Brown, the governor, is also very progressive, and they call her Kate Brown Shirt, which is, to be honest, it's pretty funny. But I think a lot of the young people here that have not been able to achieve what they felt were their laudable and achievable dreams, they need someone to blame for this. And they're angry. And so they're going to blame systemic racism, and they're going to blame the police, and they're going to blame the fact that they can't afford rents, and they're going to blame the mayor. And I think there are a whole lot of other solutions. I think they can look to themselves for a lot of these solutions and not start tearing stuff down. And as I've written like time and time and time again, is that, they're extremely good right now at breaking stuff and at tearing stuff down. That's easy. It's like, hey, dude, let's go over to your house and demo your kitchen. It's going to be super fun, and we're going to demo it and knock it down. Now it's like, okay, now we got to build the kitchen. I have yet to see evidence that they know how to build. And, if you're going to have a working city, you got to have things that are working, not just things that have been destroyed. And that's, right now, I don't see much being built in Portland.
Yeah, that's a good point. To give some of these people their due, I've heard a lot of things like current generations don't, they're saddled with college debt, and they don't have the opportunity to make money that their parents did, and these sorts of things, which I think, there's some truth to that. But by and large, it seems to me that a lot of people don't know their history and how much worse things used to be. And if everyone was able to read like Steven Pinker's Better Angels of Our Nature and the Enlightenment Now, then we could see like the amazing progress that we've made as a species. That's just my opinion on that.
In nearly every area. And you know what,
Right.
kids? If you don't like it, fix it. Okay? Because that's what every generation has to do. You don't like it, you don't have the money, go fix it. Don't wait for somebody else. Don't blame everybody else. Like, that, what a world, what a terrible place to be, to just sit around and complain that it's somebody else's fault. You don't think you have a good job? Okay, go get a better job. You don't like your boss at the coffee shop? Okay, go ahead, go build your own coffee shop. Don't just endlessly complain. Like, go build something. I actually, if these guys want to like live what they're talking about, I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Like, build a new world. I want to see it. And I guess that they say that they are, by defeating, certain inequalities or things that need to be fixed. But right now, the way that they're fixing it is by tearing other people down. And that, I'm sorry, it's too easy. It's too easy. It's much harder to build.
Yeah, it's not productive. And the other thing that I was sort of hinting at when I asked if you think there's something that is tying people together is, I've talked a little bit about this with Douglas Murray, but there's clearly a decline in traditional religious adherence, and it's been happening for 30 or 40 years, especially in the 2000s onward. And I sort of wonder what your thoughts are on this, but if that is partly to blame, or partly an explanation for why people are latching onto something that gives them a grand narrative and this sort of like Jordan Peterson-esque concept of life. They need something to tap into. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. I think people do crave structure. We create things. We create structures for ourselves in order to work within them to our best capacity. And some people are, I guess, attracted to that. I'm really not an expert on, why people would leave religion and what happens when they do. But you can see, it's in some cities more than others, and certainly in Portland. When I moved to Portland, I heard the word community like 400 times a day. People claim they really want community here. And I wonder, why do you think some people crave that more than others, and what does that do to the tenor of a city?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm a journalist, so I'm supposed to be being interviewed, but
Yeah.
of course I'm going to interview you. So
No, that works. Why do some people crave community?
why
more
do
than
they
others?
crave it? Why do some people crave it more than others?
Yeah, I would in part suggest that because there is a decline of religious community, that would explain part of it. The other part perhaps is a lot of people, even like myself, moved here because I didn't like my hometown. I didn't like the community I grew up with. And so perhaps I'm sure there are other variables, but those would be the two things I would look at.
Okay.
And what I was hinting at too is, it's nice to have a grand narrative about your life. It's nice to know who the bad guy is, who the good guy is. It's nice to fight evil, right? If you're on the side of good, then you have something to wake up for every morning, right?
Yeah, it's a little chilling though, right?
Oh yeah.
Because if you make those rules, which I think is very hard to make, and and to say, okay, I'm the good guy, and that's the bad guy. How do you determine those things, and what happens when the world changes and your position that you've maybe invested in a lot and now you're the bad guy? We're seeing that in Portland. So I covered a story for Reason Magazine in February of 2019 when the Portland City Council wanted to pass a resolution to ban hate groups in the city of Portland. But they would not, and deliberately did not, define what a hate group was. Well, we now see Mayor Ted Wheeler. He has been wheeled on by the citizenry, and now he's the bad guy. So what happens when you're no longer in power? You make the rules. I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. Then you're not in power anymore. What happens? You've created your own trap. You have created the vice with which you will now be the bad guy.
Totally. No, I think that's an important point. I've heard in one of your podcasts, you and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, but you mentioned that people who want to cancel others or are part of cancel culture and think it's important to, root out evil. They feel a sense of righteousness. And I'm wondering if you've seen the same thing on the streets here. Do you feel like people are involved in this sort of righteous cause? Do they feel that way, or do you think they feel that way?
Oh my goodness, they completely feel that way. Now, I will qualify that by saying I think as in any movement, you're going to have, sort of the loud minority, and then you're going to have a lot of these sort of people that kind of go along, like they put on the outfit. I'll give you an example. So I had two very young kids, in black bloc, I don't think they were probably 20, come up and shout in my face, photography equals death. And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, they just kept shouting. And I was like, well, okay, I need you to break this down for me, because I had been taking a picture with my camera, and they couldn't do anything. They literally just kind of like melted back into the crowd. But I also had a couple of other young people who, when they were defending the practice of throwing buckets of feces into the police station, as well as setting fire to the police station, when I said to them, where does that go from here? And have you heard of the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany in the 1960s, who were going to, do the right thing, and that right thing wound up being kidnapping and bombings and murder. And they looked at me with such disdain and just basically said, you don't get it, and walked on. So do they feel righteous? Yes, I think that they do. And I think that they feel that their righteousness will condone anything that they want to do. And also completely unexamined. And further, if I may, I've been writing about a Patriot Prayer guy who was murdered in the street. That was something of a story, Aaron Danielson. And after he was shot in the chest and killed in the street within hours, there were like a Black Bloc, BLM, Antifa crew on the streets of Portland cheering his death, cheering it, saying, I am not sorry that a fascist was murdered. First of all, they knew nothing about him, and second of all, he wasn't a fascist. But, let's put that to the side. I believe anybody that does that contains the seeds of their own destruction.
He was a fucking Nazi! I am not sad that a fucking fascist died tonight!
That's really, really actually heartbreaking for me to see people that are maybe 20 years old cheering the murder of someone that they know really nothing about, except that he's ostensibly, on the other team. That's a heartbreaking situation for me. And I would wish for them to gain a little bit more knowledge before they keep moving in this direction, because it may not be controllable. I have seen some people that I call the reluctant revolutionaries who started out and got a little hot, and they're like staying home now and playing board games because they didn't sign up for this. But we will see, if it doesn't cool down, we will see more murder in the street. And I would hope that people wouldn't say, well, my movement says that that's okay.
Yeah, it's just utterly terrifying to me.
It's terrible.
I have an ex-girlfriend who also cheered on his death, essentially, and I asked what evidence she had that he was a white supremacist. She didn't have any.
No.
And not only that, but a mutual actress in Portland was friends with this guy, and was, they didn't agree politically, but she was so heartbroken, and I thought, man, this must be the perfect way for me to show my ex-girlfriend that she's way off base. Didn't change her opinion.
No, not at all. Don't, as my father would say, don't confuse me with the facts. He would say that, sarcastically. Yeah, I actually, when you guys walked in, I'm writing about that guy today. And the reason I'm writing about it actually is because I can't get over that video. I just can't. I can't do it. It's just so terrible. I can't say whether that's the way this movement is going. I also think, again, if it contains the seeds of its own destruction, it won't last very long. They'll eat their own. So, let's see.
Yeah, no, yeah, hopefully it won't result in more murders. That would be
great,
ideal.
yeah.
Yeah, so that sense of righteousness, which you have to feel that sense if you're going to justify murder, obviously. I think that's one reason that I view this as this movement, this woke movement, as a religion. It sort of reminds me of my parents' self-righteousness when they believed that they could be a conduit to God and tell me exactly what was on God's mind. It's very similar to me. And I also notice a kind of righteousness manifesting when people speak out against or just are in disagreement with leftist orthodoxy. You know, they say homophobia isn't an opinion, racism isn't an opinion, transphobia isn't an opinion. So you must be a bigot if you don't agree with the woke social justice solutions to these issues, right? So to skip ahead to the question, what do you think about that way of shutting down conversation, and what can we do to or should we even try to convince these people that we're not bigots and we do care about these things? We may not think the same way they do. Yeah, so it's kind of a two-parter. It's I guess we can just start with the first part, which is, what do you think about that idea that anything that deviates from the norm, from the sort of woke social justice norm, anything that deviates from that is sort of equals bigotry?
Okay, so anybody that tells you anything that deviates from their norm equals bigotry has a very, very small mind, okay? I mean, if you've come up with this idea of how the world should be and I don't agree with that, or I have something to add to it, I'm automatically, a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, whatever. Wait, you're in charge here and somehow I'm the bad person because you decided that? This is very queer, very strange. I think people accusing you of something that you are not is a form of sort of preemptive. They're trying to preempt their victory, right? So I'm going to quote a friend of mine, Camille Foster, who's on a great podcast that I've been lucky enough to be on a few times called The Fifth Column. And he says, when people come and accuse you of something that you very, very well know you are not guilty of, you have to be brave, call bullshit. Okay? Anybody can come up and call me anything they want. They can tell me I'm 7'8". They can tell me I'm from Croatia. Okay? I am neither of these things. Do I have to spend my time disabusing them of this? And what was the reason that they called me this in the first place? Okay? Someone that comes up to you and accuses you of something that you know you're not, they have their own agenda. And I'm sorry, I don't even think it's worth my time trying to debate them because they've come in to attack me. Why are they bringing this up? On what evidence? Do I really want to spend my time doing this? I really don't. And I'll tell you something else. I do not want to spend my time being a reactionary, not as a writer, not as a human. I want to have discussions with you, but I'm not going to be stuck in some little corner and have you come up and pummel me because you think that this is going to somehow bolster and staunch your idea of yourself or your ideology. Sorry, not doing it. Not.
I think that's a great approach. What about people who are worried that their reputation may be ruined or they may be reported to their boss or something? In that case, should we bother fighting against that? What do you think?
Well, their boss has to get a little stronger than that, okay? And believe me, I've been put in this position, but you have to stand up for what you believe in and not cave. And if people accuse you of things that you know you have not done, do not say, okay, well, now I'm going to, go on my groveling tour or whatever it is in hopes that you're going to make them happy. You're not going to make them happy. They don't want to be happy. They want to somehow feel that they've scored some important victory here. Well, what did you score? Now, you can say, well, we look at some of our media institutions and they've somehow been able to get rid of people they don't like, and now they have a larger voice in the world for one particular opinion. But is that opinion really going to last? It will be influential, yes, I don't disagree with that, but my way of fighting that, or not even fighting that, is to just put what I think to be good opinions into the world, put good work into the world. I don't want to play defense. I have zero interest in doing that.
No, I think that's great. As far as these discussions go, when we don't agree with, for instance, I don't know, all disparity equals racism or something like that. If we don't agree with that, why do you think it's important that we have nuanced discussions about all of these issues, whether it's homophobia or racism or sexism?
Curiosity. I mean, I'm curious. I interviewed someone here yesterday. We pretty much completely disagreed on Trump. He was a Trump fan, and he could tell me why, and I'm not really. We had such a good time. And at the end of the discussion, he's like, wow, I've really never had so much fun disagreeing with someone, because we were open to listening to the other person. It wasn't a combat zone. In terms of the idea that we're all supposed to be equal at all times in every way, shape, and form, I don't even know if that's an interesting goal. I think it's interesting to let people do what they're good at, and to do it with kindness and curiosity, and let's see where we go. Let's see what people are able to build.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. What effect do you think that wokeness has on free speech, and why does that matter?
Oh my God. Look, language is awesome. Language is always growing, right? Language should always grow because we are humans and we create language. Language should not shrink. And that's what I think wokeism is trying to do. It's like saying, yo, you can't say that. You can't say that. It's like, why? I mean, show me more interesting ways to say something. What are you thinking about? But no, the contracting of language is not the way forward, guys. That's not progress.
Right. Well, I think to give them their due, that often, SJWs, if you want to call them that, want to clamp down on speech that they feel is offensive because it's harmful, and I understand that, but I'm wondering why, if you do think we should protect speech we don't like, and why.
Well, you have to protect speech you don't like, because if I want the right to speak about what I want to speak about, then I have to allow that to anybody else, even if it's odious. I mean, I don't know if you've read Jonathan Rauch's Kindly Inquisitors, a book I highly recommend. It's like, let all the ideas into the arena. Let them all in, all of them, even the worst ones, and let them duke it out and let the best ideas win. I watched a fantastic documentary the other night about the former head of the ACLU, Ira Glasser. It's just really lovely. I really recommend it. And how they were able to weave the Brooklyn Dodgers into it. But anyway, it's like, yeah, they did defend the Nazis, right to rally in Skokie, Illinois. And you know what? It all fizzled. You know why? Because it wasn't the right idea. Let them in. Let all the ideas in, and let the best ideas win.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. So people are, as you alluded to earlier, they're terrified to speak out on some of the excesses of this movement for fear of being called racist.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you think that this is a sign of progress, the fact that we're all so terrified to speak out because the word racist has such a terrible connotation. Doesn't that seem like progress in a way?
No. Why? Why? Because it's a magic bullet? It's like, oh, wait, hold on. I've got my little weapons here, and if I don't feel that I can win this argument with you or whatever it is, I just accuse you of being a racist, and I win.
Oh no, sorry. I mean, isn't it a sign of progress that we're all so worried about that word? In other words, no one wants to be racist, virtually.
Well, I think you said this earlier, we have, as a country, become less and less racist as we move forward, and may it continue on that arc. I mean, I remember one of my very, very earliest memories is, I must have been like 4. My mother had the television on and she was crying because it was the civil rights movement, and there were fire hoses being, shot at African Americans in the street. We don't live in that world anymore, right? We have progressed from there. And why don't we allow ourselves to continue to progress by the way we live and the way we treat others, as opposed to just saying, well, look, I am going to call you a racist and erase you permanently from society with your boss and your friends and your social media, because that's progress. How is that progress? That's another form of hurt. Of hurting people, I think.
Yeah, totally. You said on Brett Weinstein's podcast that more people need to stop being afraid of being called racist. And if we determine that someone's not actually a racist, how do we encourage ourselves and others to care less about these false accusations?
Okay, the problem is who determines, right? Everybody's going to see what they want to see. Everything is prismatic. It depends where you're standing. It depends what you want to see today. It depends what your agenda is. It depends where you grew up. It depends who you are. You're never going to get a consensus. I mean, there could be some people that pretty much we could say, yeah, David Duke is a racist. Okay, fine. But it's just become too incendiary right now. I believe, just like I said, I am not 7'8" and I am not from Croatia. I don't feel like I need to spend my time defending myself of being accused of these things that I know I am not. I do not feel like I need to spend my time defending myself by someone that might want to call me racist, because I know that I am not. And now let's move on to the next thing that we have to do in this world. That's how I would address it.
That's fantastic. On the phone, you mentioned that your husband was canceled, and I was wondering, as far as you're comfortable talking about that, can you kind of summarize what happened there?
Sure. Well, it wasn't really my husband that was canceled. It was me for having a video podcast with another journalist where we were talking about some of the excesses. Well, we talked about a lot of things, but one of the things we talked about were what we saw as the excesses of the Me Too movement. We didn't think Aja Argento was a great public face of the Me Too movement, especially after, her boyfriend, Anthony Bourdain, committed suicide, and it was determined that he had been paying off a boy she slept with when she was 17. I mean, it wasn't a particularly inflammatory podcast. I thought it was interesting. People seemed to like it. We were having discussions about things that, some people feel a little uncomfortable talking about, but we didn't. And it was a former employee of my husband's who was mad at him and decided to make it an issue and brought it to the press that I was a dangerous person and my views were vile and actually caused physical harm to his employees, which was kind of a reach. But the press had a field day with it. And they couldn't do very much to me because I write nationally. I had a book out, but they could because there was a physical object in terms of his businesses here in Portland. He paid a very heavy price, and it was definitely not fun. And it's something that happened. It made me kind of enter that world of people that have had cancellations. Certainly, some worse than that was. But I think, as I said to you earlier before we started rolling, it's like, this is a terrible thing. And the way we don't engage in it is as much as we can to not engage in it. If you're an employer and someone comes to you and says, oh my God, you've got this terrible employee, well, maybe you want to not just shut this person out. You want to look into it. I also don't want to take long, luxurious baths in the cancel porn. It's just, I want to move forward. You want to find out better ways to operate, make people not feel so fearful. And if people aren't fearful, they will not cave to it and hopefully not engage in it. The thing is that people engage in it because it works, which is a problem. But I would hope we can move to a post-cancellation society where it just becomes so noxious, and maybe some of the cancelers get canceled, which I've spoken to some people that's happened to, and they're like, man, wish I hadn't done that. Came back to bite me. So so that's that story.
Yeah.
So what's canceled?
What's canceled? Canceled means where did it start? Did it start on Black Twitter? I don't really know the genesis of it, but it's where they basically say you as a personality or as a business or whatever, canceled, meaning you're not going to be able to work or operate the way that you did anymore. We're going to ruin your reputation. We're going to take away your livelihood. Because we're going to be able through our little through social media to make enough people think that you're terrible and deserve to not have any standing in society. We're going to embarrass you. We're going to humiliate you, and we're going to make it hard for you to make a living. It's really bad. I mean, I have not ever done this, and I would be so mortified to do that, even to the point now, if someone writes something kind of stupid on Twitter, I really check myself before I go on any sort of negativity because it's just not worth it. I also think, I've said this before, I think that canceling is a little too easy. You know, all you do is sometimes, like, you could be the spearheader that you're like waging the battle, or you could be the person that just like, oh, I'll just click that button. I kind of like that. I don't like that kind of looks like something I dislike. And then you snowball and you're part of the hundreds of thousands of people. And then when that person, you know, is destroyed, you're like, well, wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything. All I did was click a button. It's like, yeah, well, but you clicked the button. I think that canceling people steals more from the cancelers sometimes than it does from the canceled, because you have to be that kind of person that feels it's okay to heedlessly and without information destroy another person. And I don't think that's a very good position to take. I don't think that's a good way to live.
I don't either. Yeah, it sounds caustic.
Pretty awful.
Yeah.
Actually.
And you mentioned earlier the idea of them eating their own, and I'm wondering, you know, as a result of the fact that, like, this is sort of a puritanical movement, right? You
Definitely.
can't be pure enough, and
Definitely.
And there's also no redemption, which is one of the only ways it deviates from most religions.
That's
there's
right.
usually salvation of some kind. I'm wondering if you think. I mean, I kind of think maybe this is the fatal flaw. Like, do you think that this will cause the movement to implode on itself or change in some way, or what do you think?
That's such an interesting comment, and you're absolutely right. Like the no redemption, you can look at. There was actually my buddy Michael Moynihan did a news segment interviewing someone who had created, I think it was a T-shirt company, and then his employees didn't like him because they found out that he had like touched a woman's genitals when she was sleeping, and they basically were trying to cancel him, and they wanted his company, they wanted everything. And he asked them on camera, like, is there a way back for this guy? And it's like, no. It's like, oh, okay. So like at 30, you're just supposed to be what? You just like, we just put you on an ice floe and there you go. It's lazy to just like set somebody off and say, I don't care about their life anymore, and I don't want this person to have any way back ever. If that's the modus operandi you're going to live by, you better be careful, because absolutely this will come for you. And you've set it up, just like I was talking about before. But if you create that and you feel it's okay to do that to other people, how in the world can you expect that this is not going to happen to you? Because you're one of the good people? What? You created a terrible system.
Do you think it will eventually result in the collapse of this movement?
I think society continues to evolve. We're going to see other good things and we're going to see other bad things. I don't know. I mean, the idea that, you know, this sort of way of treating people will forever be the way we operate is ridiculous. You know, we will move on to better things and other awful things. So yeah, at a certain point, it will pass from. It'll sunset.
Right. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to see more of my work, you can head on over to Locals, which is an awesome free speech platform that won't take down or flag any videos, which YouTube is known to do. It's a great platform because people want to be there and they'll engage in meaningful dialogue with you, and it's awesome. Plus, if you sign up for a paid account, you can get access to content that is exclusive to Locals. You'll find a link for that in the description below. Also, if you ever see me lying down in interviews or in any of the videos, it's because I lived with debilitating back pain for years, so I just wanted to explain that so you understand what's going on. And sometimes my little dog Nora might make an appearance. Nora, come here. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. All right, thanks everybody.